Imagine falling from 10,000 feet into a jungle so vast and wild that no one could possibly survive. A teenager, alone, injured and lost in the heart of the Amazon, fights not just for her life, but for hope, for her family, for every breath she takes. How does anyone survive when the world has already given up on them? Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching? The sky above Lima shimmered with a strange golden light that morning, as if it already knew what was coming. Elena Vargas, a 17-year-old girl with curious brown eyes and an old leather sketchbook clutched to her chest, stood by the airport window, watching planes disappear into the horizon. She had always loved the idea of flying, the feeling of freedom, the distance from everything that ever hurt. But today, that same thought made her uneasy. Her father, Dr. Rafael Vargas, a quiet environmental scientist, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's just a few hours, Mejia," he said gently. "By tonight, we'll be in Manaus. The Amazon will welcome us home." Elena smiled faintly, hiding her nerves. The jungle was her father's life, a place of endless research and discovery. For her, it was something else entirely, a world of mystery and fear, beautiful yet wild. She had promised her father this trip before the new year, to visit his research camp deep inside the rainforest. But deep down, she wished she had said no. Inside the plane, the hum of engines filled the cabin. Aerovista Flight 319 carried 87 passengers, families, businessmen, students, all strangers bound by one journey. Flight attendants moved gracefully down the aisles, offering drinks and snacks. Elena sat by the window, seat 17A, sketching clouds that drifted like cotton ghosts. Beside her, her father read through his notes, scribbling equations and plant names, occasionally glancing at her with a proud smile. "Do you ever wonder what it's like up there?" Elena asked suddenly, pointing at the clouds. Her father looked up. "Up there?" "Yes. Where the clouds start to touch heaven," he chuckled softly. "That's where courage lives, I think. The place between fear and faith." His words lingered like a melody. Elena turned back to the window, letting her mind wander. The captain's voice soon echoed through the speakers, calm, confident. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Aerovista Flight 319 with service from Lima to Manaus. Expected flight time, 2 hours and 30 minutes. Weather looks clear, though there's a light storm building near the border. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about." The phrase would later echo in her mind like a cruel joke. For the first hour, everything was perfect. The sky painted soft shades of blue and gold, and the world below looked peaceful, rivers like silver snakes cutting through emerald forests. Elena laughed at her father's attempt to draw a parrot on the napkin, badly. The passengers relaxed. The crew shared Christmas jokes. Someone began singing softly near the back. It almost felt like magic. Then, 30 minutes before landing, the captain's calm voice returned, but it trembled slightly this time. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are entering a mild storm system. Please fasten your seatbelts." The first drop of turbulence hit like a shiver. The plane shook once, then steadied. Elena grabbed her father's hand. He squeezed back with a smile meant to comfort, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. Outside, dark clouds began to swallow the light. Lightning flashed far in the distance, beautiful, dangerous. The cabin lights flickered. A child started crying. The attendants moved quickly, securing carts, checking seatbelts. The air felt heavier. "Rafael," Elena whispered, "we're going into that." Her father looked out the window, a curtain of black clouds spinning like a vortex. "They know what they're doing, Elena, just breathe." The thunder rolled again, closer this time. Rain pounded against the fuselage, sounding like 1,000 fists. The engines roared louder. The plane tilted slightly, then steadied again. A nervous laugh ran through the cabin. Someone murmured a prayer. The captain's voice came again, strained now. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We are passing through an active storm cell. Everything is under control." But everything was not under control. A blinding flash split the sky. Lightning struck near the right wing. The lights went out for half a second. Gasps filled the air. The attendants tried to smile, but their faces were pale. The turbulence worsened. Trays fell, cups rolled, luggage compartments rattled violently. Oxygen masks dropped suddenly, swinging like pendulums. Elena's heart hammered. She tried to keep breathing, but the air felt thin. Her father leaned close, voice calm despite the chaos. "Listen to me, Elena. No matter what happens, you stay calm. You understand? You think clearly. Promise me." I promise," she whispered, trembling. Then came the sound no one ever wants to hear. A deep metallic crack followed by a burst of fire outside the window. The right engine exploded into flames. Screams filled the cabin. The plane lurched violently to one side. Elena was thrown forward, hitting her seatbelt hard. Oxygen masks whipped around like ghosts. The intercom hissed, static, shouting and then silence. Through the window, lightning flickered again, revealing the wing, burning, then breaking away completely. Her father shouted her name, reaching out, but his voice was drowned in wind and chaos. The fuselage tore open. The world outside became a tornado of light and metal. The plane broke apart mid-air. For a fraction of a second, everything was silent, and then Elena was falling. Still strapped to her seat, the force ripped her from the plane's body. Wind screamed around her. The pressure crushed her chest. Her mind couldn't understand what was happening. The sky spun, gray, black, green. She felt weightless, like a leaf caught in a hurricane. Below her stretched the endless canopy of the Amazon, a vast ocean of trees. The sound of rushing air roared in her ears. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Her fingers gripped the seat handles, knuckles white. Her father's voice echoed in her head. "Stay calm. Think clearly." The descent felt like forever, yet it lasted only seconds. Branches exploded beneath her like whips. Her body hit leaves, vines, and wood, each impact slowing her speed just enough. Then darkness swallowed her whole. When she opened her eyes, everything was green. A soft drizzle tapped her face. The scent of wet earth and decaying leaves filled her lungs. Pain pulsed through every part of her body. Her head spun. She tried to move, but her right arm wouldn't respond. Dislocated. Her ribs ached, her ankle throbbed. The seatbelt still strapped her halfway to a piece of metal. Somehow, impossibly, she was alive. Elena blinked against the dim light breaking through the canopy. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Papa." No answer. Only the sounds of the jungle, distant birds, buzzing insects, water dripping from the trees. She pushed herself up, groaning, every movement sending knives of pain through her body. Her mind struggled to process it all. The crash, the storm, the fall. It felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Her father's words floated back again. "Think clearly." She looked around. Wreckage lay scattered like broken memories. A torn piece of the fuselage, a twisted seatbelt, a lone shoe hanging from a branch 10 feet above the ground. Smoke drifted through the humid air. "Papa!" she shouted again, louder this time. But the jungle only answered with silence. She staggered forward, limping through the thick undergrowth. Each step hurt. Her hands trembled as she pushed aside ferns and vines. She searched for anything, her father, survivors, even the sound of human voices. But all she heard was nature's indifferent music. The sky above was fading into grey again. Rain began to fall harder, washing blood and dirt from her face. She collapsed beside a fallen tree, exhausted, and wept quietly into her hands. It was Christmas Eve, she remembered suddenly. The night she was supposed to be with her family. The night the world should have been filled with warmth and laughter. Instead, she was alone in a living labyrinth. Hours passed. Darkness swallowed the forest. She found a small overhang of rock and crawled beneath it for shelter. Every rustle made her flinch. Somewhere nearby a branch snapped. Maybe an animal, maybe something worse. She hugged her knees tightly, whispering to herself, "You're not dead. You're alive. You have to stay alive." As lightning lit up the forest, she stared at the sky through the leaves, torn, beautiful, distant. And for the first time since the crash, she realized the truth that both terrified and strengthened her. No one was coming for her. Not yet. If she wanted to survive this, she would have to fight for every single breath. In the heart of the Amazon, surrounded by a million unseen eyes, a 17-year-old girl began her battle, not just against the jungle, but against fear itself. The storm had taken everything from her. Now she had to find a reason to keep walking. The morning light filtered through the jungle canopy like shards of gold, piercing a sea of green. When Elena opened her eyes, for a brief moment, she thought she had died and woken up somewhere between heaven and earth. Everything was quiet except for the rhythmic hum of insects and the distant call of unseen birds. Then pain returned, sharp, deep, and real. She was very much alive. Her entire body throbbed. Her right shoulder was swollen and purple, her legs scraped and bleeding. The faint metallic taste of blood lingered on her tongue. She looked down at herself. Mud covered her clothes, one shoe missing, her hair tangled with leaves. She tried to stand, but her body betrayed her, sending a wave of dizziness through her skull. She collapsed again, gasping, "Papa!" The word slipped out weakly, but the jungle swallowed it whole. She lay still, staring at the leaves above. They moved gently with the wind, whispering secrets in a language she could not understand. Somewhere deep inside, fear began to rise, thick, suffocating. She shut her eyes and forced herself to breathe slowly, counting in her head the way her father had taught her when she was little. 1, 2, 3, breathe. After what felt like hours, she gathered the strength to crawl. Her hands dug into the damp soil. Every inch forward was a battle. She searched for anything, any sound of survivors, any sign of life. But the jungle had already claimed the wreckage as its own. Metal scraps glinted between the trees, half buried under vines and moss. The air was heavy, humid, alive. When she found the torn remains of a seatbelt tangled around a branch, she felt her stomach twist. She knew what it meant. The plane had disintegrated mid-air. If anyone else had survived, they would be here, somewhere close. But all she could hear were flies. By midday, the sun burned above her like a cruel eye. She found a small stream trickling between the roots of giant trees. Crawling to it, she cupped her hands and drank greedily. The cold water stung her throat, but gave her a flicker of life. She splashed her face and sat back, trembling. Around her, the forest moved in invisible ways, branches shifting, distant howls echoing. She realized she was sitting in a world that didn't care if she lived or died. A small butterfly landed on her knee, its wings a dazzling blue. She stared at it for a long time. The simplicity of its existence felt almost mocking. "How are you not afraid?" she whispered, her voice cracked and raw. The butterfly fluttered away, lost in the endless green. Lena's stomach growled. She remembered the small pouch she'd tucked into her jacket pocket before boarding the plane. Her sketchbook, a pencil, and a few candies. She pulled it out, soaked but intact. The candies were her only food now. She unwrapped one slowly, letting the sweetness melt on her tongue. It reminded her of her mother's kitchen back in Lima, the smell of cinnamon and laughter echoing through the house. The memory burned brighter than the sunlight. "Stay alive," she whispered to herself. "Just stay alive." She tore a page from her sketchbook and wrote shakily, "Day 1, alive, searching for Papa." Then she tucked it back safely, a promise that she would keep recording her fight. By afternoon, she forced herself to move again. The air was thick with moisture. Every breath felt like drinking steam. She followed the sound of running water, her father's voice in her head guiding her. "If you ever get lost, find a river. Rivers lead to people." It became her mantra, her lifeline. She stumbled upon a larger section of wreckage, twisted metal, luggage torn open, and clothes scattered like ghosts. Among them, she found a jacket that wasn't hers. She picked it up, sniffed it. It still smelled faintly of perfume. Tears welled up. Somewhere out there, its owner's story had ended. As she turned to leave, she froze. Her body lay a few feet away, face down, covered in leaves. Her heart pounded. She hesitated before stepping closer. The woman's hair was short, her arm bent unnaturally. Elena knelt beside her and gently brushed away the dirt. Her face was peaceful, like someone asleep. For a moment, Elena couldn't breathe. The realization hit, not everyone gets a miracle. She pressed her palms together, whispering a prayer for the stranger she would never know. When dusk fell, the jungle changed its face. The cheerful daylight sounds were replaced by the deep, guttural chorus of night. Frogs croaked, unseen wings flapped overhead, and something hissed nearby. The darkness felt alive, closing in from every direction. Elena climbed onto a low branch of a tree, clutching the trunk as she tried to stay awake. Every shadow looked like danger. Hours passed like centuries. Her body shook uncontrollably, from fear, from cold, from hunger. She whispered to herself, "Don't close your eyes." Don't. But exhaustion won. Her head drooped, her consciousness fading. The jungle's breath surrounded her. When she woke, dawn was breaking. Sunlight spilled through the leaves like a blessing. She climbed down carefully and stretched her aching legs. Her body screamed in protest. Every muscle ached, but she was alive. The realization came again, fierce and strange. I'm still here. She spent that morning searching for food. She knew a little about the jungle. Her father had taken her camping once near the Amazon. "Never eat anything bright or pretty," he had said. "Beauty hides poison here." She found some small berries, but their colors warned her to stay away. So she drank more water, forcing herself to accept hunger as another test she had to pass. By midday, her strength began to fade again. She walked in circles, confused, trying to remember the direction of the stream. The trees all looked the same. Panic began to creep in, fast, hot, relentless. She stopped, closed her eyes, and whispered, "Calm down. Elena, the forest listens when you panic. Breathe." When she opened her eyes again, she noticed something, a faint trail of broken branches leading downhill. She followed it slowly, cautiously. It led her back to the water. Relief flooded through her. She sat by the stream and cried softly, her tears mixing with the flow. For the first time since the crash, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. That night, she built a small shelter out of broken branches and leaves. It wasn't much, but it gave her a sense of control. She tore another page from her sketchbook and wrote, "Day 2 found water." No sign of Papa, still fighting. As she lay down, staring at the canopy glowing faintly under the moonlight, her mind drifted back to her father's voice. "The jungle tests those who enter it, Elena, but it also rewards those who respect it." She whispered the words aloud, as if repeating them could summon his presence. The jungle hummed in response, a low, steady sound like breathing. She listened to it, her heartbeat slowly matching its rhythm. Maybe, she thought, the forest isn't trying to kill me. Maybe it's watching. Maybe it's waiting to see if I deserve to survive. Her eyelids grew heavy, and before sleep claimed her, she murmured, "I'll find you. Papa, I promise." Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled again. The storm had passed, but the jungle's heart never rested. Above her, unseen eyes blinked from the darkness, curious, cautious. And beneath those ancient trees, a 17-year-old girl slept, unaware that her journey of survival had only just begun. When Elena awoke the next morning, her throat was parched and her body stiff from the cold, damp ground. A fine mist hung over the jungle like a ghostly veil, softening the edges of everything. The air smelled of earth and rain. She sat up slowly, her every movement followed by a symphony of rustling leaves and unseen creatures scurrying away. For a few moments she just listened, to the dripping water, to the flutter of wings, to the faint heartbeat of the forest itself. Then she remembered her father. Her pulse quickened. "Papa!" She whispered again, as though the name could summon him from the shadows, but only silence answered. She rose, brushed the dirt from her torn clothes, and gathered her strength. Her reflection shimmered faintly on the stream's surface, bruised face, swollen lip, streaks of dried blood across her forehead. The girl staring back at her looked older, harder, like someone who had lived a lifetime in 2 days. She barely recognized herself. She needed a plan. Surviving aimlessly wasn't enough. She had to move, find a clearing, a signal, a way out. The thought of rescue burned inside her like a stubborn flame. She packed her few possessions, her sketchbook, a stick she used as a walking aid, and the jacket she had found. and began following the stream deeper into the jungle. Hours turned into an endless march. The canopy above was so thick that sunlight only reached her in fragments. Strange calls echoed in the distance, haunting, guttural, almost human. At one point she froze when she heard a low growl behind her. Her heart thudded violently. She turned slowly, clutching her stick like a weapon. A pair of golden eyes glimmered in the shadows. Her breath caught. The creature stepped into the light, a jaguar. Sleek, powerful, silent. It moved with a grace that defied its size, muscles rippling under its spotted coat. For a terrifying heartbeat, their eyes locked. Elena didn't move. Neither did it. The jungle seemed to hold its breath. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the jaguar turned away and disappeared into the foliage, leaving her trembling but alive. She exhaled shakily. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty air, unsure whether she was thanking the animal or the jungle itself. By afternoon, exhaustion began to blur her senses. Her stomach cramped from hunger. She hadn't eaten in nearly 2 days. Every step felt heavier, her legs moving on sheer willpower. She stumbled upon a cluster of small green fruits hanging from a low tree. They looked harmless, but she hesitated. Her father's warning echoed again. Never eat what you don't know. But hunger screamed louder than caution. She tore off a small piece and tasted it. Bitter, but not poisonous, at least not immediately. She ate slowly, hoping her gamble wouldn't kill her. Moments later, relief spread through her body as energy returned, faint but real. When dusk began to settle, she found a large rock formation jutting out from the earth like a natural wall. It offered some shelter. She gathered dry branches and leaves, trying to remember how her father made fires on their camping trips. Sparks refused to catch at first, but after countless tries, a weak flame flickered to life. The small firelight danced across her face, making her eyes glisten with both triumph and loneliness. She sat there, staring into the flames, listening to the night creatures awaken, the clicking, the croaking, the eerie whistles. The fire was her only defense now, her fragile fortress against the endless dark. She pulled out her sketchbook, hands trembling slightly, and wrote, "Day 3, still alive. The jungle tested me again today. I saw a jaguar. Maybe I wasn't prey. Maybe it saw something in me. Something still fighting." She paused, tapping the pencil against the paper. Then she drew. The animal's eyes, the jungle's twisted roots, the stream winding through shadows. Her drawings became her voice when words failed. Suddenly a sound broke the quiet, a faint snapping of branches. She froze. Her eyes darted toward the darkness beyond the firelight. "Who's there?" she whispered, no answer. Another snap, closer this time. She gripped her stick and slowly stood. The fire crackled, throwing long shadows on the trees. Her heart pounded in her chest. Then from the darkness a low moan. Elena's eyes widened. "Papa?" she gasped, stepping forward, her instincts warring with fear. The moan came again, weak but unmistakably human. She grabbed a burning stick from the fire as a torch and pushed through the underbrush. And then she saw him. A man slumped against a fallen tree, his shirt torn and blood dried across his chest. He was breathing, barely. His face was half hidden by dirt and bruises, but when he turned slightly, her heart leapt. "Papa!" she screamed, dropping the torch and rushing to his side. He opened his eyes weakly, struggling to focus. Elena?" His voice was faint, cracked. "You're alive." She broke down in tears, cradling his head in her lap. "I thought I lost you," she sobbed. "I thought you were gone." He smiled faintly, though pain flickered across his face. You're stronger than I ever was," he whispered. "You found me." For the first time since the crash, Eleanor felt the crushing weight of hope, raw and real. She tore a strip from her sleeve and began cleaning his wounds carefully, whispering words of comfort she wasn't sure he could even hear. The night surrounded them like a living thing, but she no longer felt alone. Hours passed as she tended to him. He drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering fragments about the crash, the explosion, and something about the radio being destroyed. But one thing was clear: They were deep in the jungle, days away from any civilization. When dawn came, his condition worsened. He could barely move. She tried to feed him pieces of the fruit she'd found, but he shook his head weakly. "Don't waste it." "On me," he murmured. "Save yourself," she refused. "Don't say that," she said fiercely. "We're both getting out of here." He looked at her, the determination in her young eyes, and a tear rolled down his cheek. "You remind me of your mother," he whispered. She never gave up either. That morning, as the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, Eleanor made a decision. She would build a signal fire, something big enough for rescuers to see. Even if it took every ounce of strength she had left, she climbed to the top of the nearest hill, dragging branches, gathering leaves, building a pyre with trembling hands. Sweat stung her eyes, her palms raw from work, but she didn't stop. When it was finally ready, she struck her flint again and again until smoke began to rise, a thin grey column piercing through the jungle roof. She ran back down to her father. "They'll see it, Papa, someone will see it." He smiled faintly. "I believe you," he whispered, his voice fading. "You're my brave girl." And then his hand went limp. Elena froze, her breath shattering in her chest. "Papa?" she whispered, shaking him. "Papa, please, wake up." But the jungle was silent again. The smoke rose high above the trees, curling against the morning sky, a signal of life, of love, of loss. Elena fell to her knees beside him, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. The forest watched, still and ancient. Minutes turned to hours. The fire burned itself out, and as night returned, Elena sat beside her father's body, holding his hand, whispering the same promise over and over into the dark. "I'll survive, Papa. I'll make it out. For you." The next morning came like a cruel dream, soft golden light filtering through the treetops, birds singing as if the world hadn't just broken apart. Elena sat motionless beside her father's body, eyes swollen, skin pale, soul hollow. She hadn't slept. She couldn't. The jungle had become both her witness and her cage. The realization that she was alone, truly alone, settled over her like a suffocating fog. She touched his hand one last time, still cold, and whispered, "I'll keep my promise." Her voice trembled, but her resolve was clear. She closed his eyes gently and covered him with leaves and flowers, a quiet grave in a world that had forgotten them both. When she finally stood, her legs wobbled beneath her. She was weak, dizzy, starving, but somewhere deep inside, a fire still burned, small, fragile, but alive. "You survived the crash," she told herself. "You found him. Now you must find yourself." She turned toward the endless expanse of trees and began walking. The days that followed blurred into one another, an unending journey through green, tunnels of vines and shadows. Her body adapted to the rhythm of survival. She drank from the stream when she could, ate insects and roots when there was nothing else, and learned to read the forest's whispers. She recognized bird cries that meant danger and rustling that meant rain. The jungle, once terrifying, had become her reluctant teacher. On the 5th day, she discovered something unexpected. Footprints, human ones. Her heart leapt. She crouched, tracing them with her fingers. They were fresh, maybe a few hours old. She followed them, moving cautiously but desperately, every step powered by hope. The path twisted through the dense foliage until it opened into a small clearing. There, beside a smoking fire pit, were 2 figures, men rugged and sunburned, their clothes torn but eyes alert. One looked up sharply as she stumbled into view. "Help me," she croaked, her voice barely a whisper. They froze, staring at her as though she were an apparition. Then one of them rushed forward. "Dios mío! A survivor?" he exclaimed in a thick accent. He caught her just as her knees buckled. When she woke, she was lying beneath a makeshift shelter. A damp cloth rested on her forehead, and a tin cup of water sat beside her. The men introduced themselves as Raphael and Diego, local loggers who'd been searching for debris from the crash. "We thought no one survived," Raphael said gently. "You're a miracle." She tried to smile, but her lips quivered. "My father!" "He didn't make it." Both men lowered their heads in silence. Diego reached out, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now. We'll get you out." The following day, they began their trek toward the nearest village, a 2-day journey through brutal terrain. Elena walked with them, her body aching but her spirit pushing forward. Each step took her farther from her father's grave, but closer to life. The jungle, however, seemed unwilling to let her go easily. That night, as they camped near a riverbank, a storm rolled in. The sky roared, lightning tearing the heavens apart. The men scrambled to secure their supplies, shouting over the wind. Elena huddled under a tarp, watching the trees sway violently. The storm was relentless, and soon the river began to swell. "Move! The water's rising!" Raphael shouted. They grabbed what they could and ran, but the jungle floor had become a swamp of mud and roots. A sudden rush of water surged toward them, knocking Elena off her feet. She screamed as she was dragged downstream, the world spinning into chaos. "Elena!" Raphael's voice echoed behind her, fading fast. She fought desperately, grabbing at branches, rocks, anything to slow her fall. Her hands tore open, her body slammed against debris. Just when she thought she couldn't hold on, she managed to grip a tree trunk jutting from the riverbank. With every ounce of strength, she pulled herself up, gasping, soaked to the bone. The rain continued all night, but she stayed clinging to that tree, shivering, whispering her father's words over and over. "Don't give up. Not now, not ever." When dawn came, the storm had passed. The world smelled new, clean, as if it had been reborn. But there was no sign of Raphael or Diego. The river had swallowed them whole. Elena's heart broke again. Yet somehow, she found herself walking once more. Her clothes hung heavy, her body a patchwork of bruises and scars. But her eyes burned with a kind of strength no storm could wash away. Hours later, she stumbled upon a small rise overlooking a valley. In the distance, she saw something that made her fall to her knees. Smoke. Not from a fire she'd made, but from houses, civilization. Tears streamed down her face. "I made it," she whispered. "I actually made it." With the last of her strength, she descended toward the village. Locals found her collapsed near the entrance, weak, feverish, half-conscious. When she opened her eyes again, she was lying on a clean bed, surrounded by voices speaking softly. A nurse leaned over her, smiling kindly. "You're safe now, querida," she said. "You're going home." Elena's gaze drifted toward the window. The jungle stretched far in the distance, its green heart pulsing with life. She felt both gratitude and sorrow. That wild, merciless place had taken so much, her father, her innocence. Yet it had also given her something profound: courage, resilience, purpose. Weeks later, as she sat in a rehabilitation center, journalists came to interview her. Cameras flashed, microphones hovered. Everyone called her the miracle girl of the Amazon. She answered their questions politely, but avoided the sensational headlines. Her story wasn't about fame. It was about survival, love, and the bond that even death couldn't sever. At night, when the noise of the world faded, she would take out her sketchbook, now wrinkled, torn, but precious. On its final page, she wrote in careful, steady letters, "Day 27, I made it out, but a part of me stayed there, in the jungle, with him." She closed the book and smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. "We did it, Papa," she whispered to the stars. "We survived, and somewhere deep in the Amazon, under a blanket of leaves and flowers, the jungle whispered back, carrying her father's voice through the wind. I'm proud of you, mi hija." The forest rustled softly in response, not with menace this time, but with peace. It had tested her, broken her, and rebuilt her, and as Elena looked up at the night sky, she finally understood. Survival wasn't about escaping the jungle. It was about learning to live with it inside her.